Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Genevieve Wood, Vice President of Marketing for the Heritage Foundation.
He just took my teleprompters away. What's going on here? All right. First of all, I want to say on behalf of all my colleagues at the Heritage Foundation, most of which are in Washington, D.C., it is an honor to be here. It is an honor to be another sponsor of CPAC. We love what the American Conservative Union is doing. And I also want to thank all of you here who are members of Heritage. You make it possible for us to do what we do every day. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you're not a Heritage member, we can take care of that today. You step outside to our booth. We have forms you can fill out. Before we get started with our panel, I don't know if any of you saw the Values voter bus as you came into the parking lot today. This is a joint project of the Heritage Foundation and the Family Research Council, two organizations based in D.C., but who know that the answers to our country's woes will not most likely come from Washington, D.C. They'll come from the folks outside of taking the country back. So we decided to join up because while we both believe in the conservative principles of free enterprise and traditional American values and a strong national defense, individual freedom, all of those things matter to both of our organizations, FRC is primarily known for the social issues, life, marriage, religious liberty, and Heritage is better known for our economic policy, how to do tax reform, how to get spending and the debt under control. But we said, you know what? These issues are indivisible. We have to win on all of these because so many of the economic problems in this country are because of family breakdown. So many of the dollars that are spent out of Washington and state capitals across this country are because families aren't taking care of themselves and the government is stepping in. So if you don't have strong families, you're not going to have a strong economy. But at the same time, it is very tough for families and communities to take care of one another when they are being taxed and buried in debt. And as so many of our speakers have already talked about, I believe, and Mitt Romney talked about last night, the debt is a moral issue. What we are passing on to the next generation is absolutely immoral. So we've teamed up on this bus tour together. We've been going since the end of January. We've now been to 24 states around the country. We've been to Colorado twice, and we are very encouraged about what we're seeing in the great state of Colorado. Thank you for those of you who are here from that great state. But I want to tell you, I think you should be encouraged because everywhere we've been, there are people just like you in every state who cannot wait to vote on November 6th, who cannot wait to take people with them, and who are going door to door and doing what it takes to win an election. So be encouraged, and I know last night was even more of an encouragement. So thank you for what you're already doing and what you're going to do over the next 30-plus days. Again, final point before we bring out the panel. I know there are a lot of exhibitors here, and if you've been through Exhibit Hall, you've seen them. We have tables out there. Heritage does. Family Research Council does. All the sponsors here of CPAC. I want to encourage you to please take the materials at these tables. You will reach people that we will never reach. So if you go to the Heritage table, take everything we've got. It does us no good to ship it back to Washington where a lot of folks don't want to hear about these ideas. Please take the materials, give them and distribute them far and wide. Pick up our packets on saving the American dream. There's pocket constitutions in there that everybody should have. Take them and pass them on. All right, let's talk about this upcoming panel. How many of you like to watch Fox News Sunday? Yeah? You like the media panel they have at the end where everybody's kind of talking about the day's news? Well, we're going to try to have the MSNBC panel up here today, but they were busy. They couldn't join us. So instead, we're going to have an all-conservative, all-star media panel talking about the day's news. And the first on that list, how many of you are familiar with the Daily Caller? Great outlet coming out. Well, joining us now from the Daily Caller is Matthew Boyle. Matthew is a reporter with the Daily Caller. He has only been there now for about 2 years. He is fresh out of school, but he was so good they picked him up. We were talking earlier about young conservatives. This gentleman was an editor of his newspaper at not the University of Florida, but in Florida at Flagler College in St. Augustine. He was so good the Daily Caller said, let's bring him on. You all saw him earlier because he's done a lot of work when it comes to investigating scandals. You've had your work cut out for you. Also joining us now, Charlie Spearing. Charlie, come on out. Charlie is with the Washington Examiner, another great conservative media outlet. Charlie is a commentary staff writer there. He mostly writes on political commentary. He previously worked for the Rappahannock News, which is a newspaper in Virginia. But my favorite thing about your resume is that you worked for one of my all-time favorite conservatives, the late and very great Robert Novak. So you must be a good guy. Thank you, Charlie. Also joining us on this panel, he is not a journalist, but he's a great American. He's a veteran of our military. He is currently a senator from the great state of Montana. State Senator Ryan Zinke is joining us. State Senator, come on out. Ryan has been a member of the U.S. Navy, and he was a commander of the Navy SEALs. Very impressive gentleman. He was awarded 2 Bronze Stars for his active combat duty, and on behalf of all of us here, thank you for your service to our country. And last but not least, here from the state of Colorado, Wayne Laugesen. Wayne is with the Colorado Springs Gazette, where he is the editor of the editorial page, very important position there. He's also the national correspondent for the National Catholic Register. Gentlemen, thank you all very much for being with us. Well, I thought to get us started off, we should take a look at what maybe you all see on TV. You see news clips, different commentators, and I want to get you all to comment on the news of the week. Let's take a look at what was said prior to the debate. This was earlier this week. Governor Christie of New Jersey had this to say about how he thought the debate needed to go, and we'll get your reactions to whether you thought it did. Let's roll the tape.
Friday, we got the administration's sort of definitive statement that this now looks as though it was a pre-planned attack by a terrorist group, and some of whom were at least sympathetic to al-Qaeda. Why do you think, and are you bothered, that it has taken them this long, from September 11th to now, to get to this conclusion?
I think it interferes with the depiction that the administration is trying to convey, that al-Qaeda is on the wane, that everything's fine in the Middle East. And
you think it's political?
I think there's certainly political overtones. How else could you trot out our UN ambassador to say this was a spontaneous demonstration?
Maybe they thought that at the time.
5 days later, that doesn't pass the smell test. It was either willful ignorance or abysmal intelligence to think that people come to spontaneous demonstrations with heavy weapons, mortars, and the attack goes on for hours. And there were warnings, as you know, because part of it, CNN put out part of Chris Stevens' diary.
All right, well, I've worked long enough in live television to know that sometimes the wrong tape plays. That wasn't Governor Christie. That was obviously Senator McCain talking about the Libya scandal. So let's start there. We'll come back to Governor Christie later. Senator, let me ask you, you obviously have been in the military. What do you think of what's happened in Libya and where our country is today in terms of what the administration, their policy, but also how they've handled this specific episode?
Well, I think clearly a policy of apology and appeasement is not right for America. When our enemy sees us as vulnerable and weak, they attack. The incidences we see, 4 embassies burning, we have 4 Americans dead, an ambassador, and I'm sure many of you have looked at the YouTube. What happened to our ambassador, I think should cause America pause. When we are weak, when we are perceived as vulnerable, there are forces out there that hate us. They're not reformable. You cannot change them. And I think Reagan had it right. You don't negotiate with terrorists. So with Ambassador, you don't. So when Ambassador Rice went on her circuit and said this is an act of spontaneous events, that a relationship, and she used, I think I'll quote, that our relationship with Israel has never been better. That's in their words. Clearly, it's either misleading, naivete, or a lie, or all 3. The fact of the matter is that we're in trouble on a foreign policy. Israel is preparing for a unilateral attack on Iran if necessary. We have failed in the policy to establish a red line. You look around the world and what's happening is that our military is the last institution that has credibility above 50%. You look at the trust at Congress, single digits. The trust of American people in our president, not much better. The military is our last institution that has credibility among the American people and credibility in the world. And that's important. It's critical that we keep a strong military because that's what drives a strong economy. And it isn't about funding, it's about the perception of strength. And so I look at the current policy, again, of appeasement and apology is the wrong path for America.
And I want to follow up, too, and come back, amen, and talk about this whole issue of sequestration and what's coming. But before we get there, let me ask you, Wayne, as somebody who's watched the media through all of this as well, how do you rate the media's coverage of this particular issue?
Well, I think it's been horrible, and they should have been calling the president on this policy of wanting to go out to the world and make sure that we're liked by everyone, as opposed to being respected by everyone, which we used to be. We used to be respected. Now we're attempting to be liked by people who cannot possibly like us. And this should have been scandalous that we had a president and his administration trying to blame this whole thing on a YouTube video that really had nothing to do with anything. And this was, the rest of the world doesn't really understand our version of free speech because we don't really have free speech. There's all kinds of things that we cannot do, that we cannot say in this country. So they see that, and then they see that that you can go on YouTube with a video like this, and they don't buy the free speech thing to begin with. And then you have a president and a secretary of state apologizing for it, and at the same time, they're not apologizing for the current display in New York of Piss Christ, for example, and all sorts of things that go on in this country where people make videos and engage in so-called artistic expressions, often with federal funds that lambaste other religions. So the whole thing is just kind of a spasmodic statement to the world, and they don't get it.
Charlie, let me ask you, though. I mean, CNN and others, Candy Crowley and a few others have been going after this story, though. I mean, they've now realized that they were kind of duped in some of these instances and probably aren't very happy about that.
CNN actually did some really good work right away. And they went into the consulate that had been attacked, and then they found the diary from the ambassador. And in that diary, they found out that he was actually concerned about security. And I think they mentioned that within 48 hours, it was clear that it was a planned terrorist attack.
Do you expect other media outlets to follow up on this?
Well, it's interesting because, we have the reports, but there's a certain class of pundits who either choose to ignore them because they don't fit their narrative, or they choose to do something else, something completely different.
Matt, your take.
I think it's pretty clear that this is a scandal. I don't know how anybody would take it any differently. You must be... What befuddles me is, why did CNN wait 8 days to print that they had the diary? They had it for 8 days, and they didn't tell anybody that they did. One of the things, and once again, this is an apologist media. If this happened under the George W. Bush administration, I guarantee you CNN and the rest of the mainstream media would be all over this from day one, as they should. And because of the fact that it's obvious that most reporters in Washington are in the pocket of the president. I mean, they want him to win. It's pretty clear. They got him elected last time. We've proved that at the Daily Caller. We put the journalist emails out. They're following the same playbook again. It's pretty clear. And what's striking to me is that why has it taken people this long to realize this? Every other scandal has followed the same procedure. It's incompetence or it's corruption. They lied or it's incompetence. It's the same thing. The Delphi pension scandals where the 20,000 auto worker retirees lost their pensions. They did the same. You hear the same excuses. The same thing with Operation Fast and Furious. The same thing with Solyndra. It's all over again. It's the same pattern over and over and over again. It's like, that old saying, you keep doing the same thing and you hope something different's going to happen. It's not. And that's the thing is that, I certainly hope that other media outlets are gonna push for this, but I don't expect them to.
Well, we have 2 presidential debates left, and one of those is going to be solely focused on foreign policy. And Senator, come back to you on this, in this whole issue of sequestration in our military. First, how do you define sequestration? You've obviously paid very close attention to this issue. How do you see it impacting the ability of our armed forces to do one of the few things the Constitution actually calls on the government to do, which is defend the country and provide for the common defense? What is a sequestration? How big of a threat is that to our armed forces?
Well, I think it's huge. And, sequestration, it's somewhat confusing where the money's going to come from, how much it is, what's the scale of cutbacks. But let's talk about a 200-ship Navy. What does it mean to have 200 ships? Well, in the Reagan administration, we're looking at a 600-ship Navy. Now, is the world any safer than it was under Reagan? Probably not. But the Navy, has four main missions. They have force projection overseas. That's what our carrier force does. We have the capability to put Marines on shore, expeditionary. We have a nuclear deterrent with our nuclear submarines. And, of course, we have protection of sea lanes. So what does it mean to lose the ability for the United States to conduct operations independently? That means without our allies. Let's go back to the great Falkland War. Britannica rules the waves, and I love the British, and I respect their Navy. But when you don't have the ability to conduct independent operations, Britain had a very, very tough time with the Falklands. I mean, before the Falkland War, many of us didn't know where the Falklands was. And they were fighting Argentina. Now, the United States provided ammunition, logistics, intelligence, all those type of things for the British to enable to overcome the Falklands. Imagine the United States not having the ability to conduct battle on our terms, that we'd have to rely on our allies. Imagine what it's like to not be able to protect sea lanes. And what is a sea lane? A sea lane is our ability to protect our interests as they go back and forth overseas, our oil, our transportation. Most of the world's goods are transported by sea. So a sequestration, significant cuts, which about 70% come in the Department of Defense. Most people realize the Department of Defense can and should be cut. I'm one of them. But how we cut it, we have to make sure we don't cut the teeth. There's tail over time. It's a bureaucracy. We can slim down some of the bureaucracy by attrition. We don't have to push people out on the street. And by the way, there are sailors right now that signed a contract for 20 years, and that contract was broken. And they're out on the street, sailors and their families. It's wrong. It's immoral.
This is an issue, and probably not surprising, that President Obama and the administration have not want to talk about at all. They've actually been pushing it back, saying we'll talk about that after the election is what they would like to do. I can tell you from our part, being on this tour and being in states like Virginia, where there's a lot of military personnel and a lot of military jobs at stake over this issue, they do know about it, and people are concerned about it. And I bet that's going to be true in other places with large military bases. You're in Colorado Springs, obviously there's military there. Is this something that voters and people seem to be talking about and understanding?
It's almost an obsession in Colorado Springs right now. We're home to Fort Carson, the United States Air Force Academy, NORAD, and a number of other major military bases and operations. And obviously it's going to have a very damaging effect on a great number of people in Colorado Springs if this happens in January. My editorial board had the privilege on Monday night of having an editorial board meeting with Mitt Romney, who did a beautiful job of expressing his outrage that the White House would, this was this was the idea of it came from the White House, that he would sacrifice our military in this way over a budgetary dispute, that he would put the welfare of our country at risk, to basically to create a political hot potato. And so it was very clear that he couldn't do anything about it, since this takes place in January if it occurs, but that he certainly would not have done this. And as far as what you were talking about, Senator, imagine a military that just simply doesn't have the might to do what we can do now. We only have to go back to 1978, 1979, to the Iranian hostage crisis, and we had a weak military at that point because we'd had too many years of neglecting the military and not spending enough on it. And our efforts to rescue hostages turned into a fiasco. It was an embarrassment. In a way, it's a good thing because it got Reagan elected, but it was a very bad thing in many other ways because people died. So that's kind of my view on the whole thing right now.
Let me toss this issue, and this is out for all of you to comment on. In the upcoming foreign policy debate between President Obama and Governor Romney, what are the issues you think ought to be on the table that you would like to see, if you were moderating it, if you will, to put before the candidates and ask their judgment on?
Well, when after the death of bin Laden, and you look at where the president views his strengths and weaknesses, and bin Laden certainly views as a strength. Never in my lifetime would I ever consider a political commercial with former President Clinton, in which he talked about the decision from the president and the consequence if that mission had failed. The consequence of that mission failing was not political, it was a loss of life. Someone would lose a husband, a father, and a son. And it would have been Americans' blood lost. That's the consequence of failure. It's not political. When you politicize the American military is not Republican or Democrat. It belongs to we the people. Most Americans do not want to see the military go either way. We report to the President under the Constitution, and all the military folks pledge an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's key and essential to America's being. So when we politicize the military, when we conduct operations for political gain, and quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised. You remember the missiles in the sand when President Clinton was being impeached. I wouldn't be surprised if America launched, a similar operation at a timely issue. I hope not. I hope our military leaders and Commander-in-Chief recognize the risk of, again, jeopardizing the credibility of our institution. And I'll say, this last point. You had a president that disclosed sensitive CIA documents for the purposes of making a movie. Dark 30. And you had a young SEAL hero that wrote a book about the killing of bin Laden. If you disclose any information that jeopardizes current or future operations, or you put our troops in harm's way at greater risk, you're wrong. And so the predicament is, how can you prosecute this young SEAL hero and not prosecute the Commander-in-Chief on the same standard?
Amen. Charles.
I'd just add that the president, during this whole past couple of years, has made it his goal to reach out to the military as if it's a constituency. He's running around the country talking about how he's going to give veterans all these great benefits, but you don't hear much about what he's going to do with foreign policy. He doesn't really have a foreign policy plan, but he does want to make sure that the veterans are taken care of. And I think it degrades the image we have of the military, that you are a constituency that we are going to take care of, and if you vote for me, your benefits will not go down.
I would add that, and this would be to both candidates, is there still a war on terror? There's bin Laden's dead, yeah, but does that mean that Al-Qaeda is still out there? I mean, the president doesn't seem to think so with with the White House's response to Libya, how are you either one of them, if Obama's reelected or if Romney wins, how are they going to deal with that threat? It's there. How are they going to do that? And I don't think, I'd love to hear from both candidates as to what they're going to do on that front.
Wayne, we'll wrap up the foreign policy piece on this one, but I mean, whether it's the Arab Spring and what's happening there, that what you see in Europe and Greece and places, in large part due to the economy, but what's our role in the world economy? President Obama ran partially on the rest of the world doesn't like us, but they'll like us if I'm the new president. Right. I don't know that our ratings have gone up that high among our foreign friends and the like. What's he going to say at the debate, and what should Mitt Romney say to that issue?
Well, I think Mitt Romney should just point out everything that's wrong in the world right now and how many threats there are to this country right now and how vulnerable we are, and ask the president whether it has done our country good. If we're safer today because he's gone on all of these apology tours throughout the world and basically weakened our position and made us sort of a laughingstock in his effort to be liked. And we're not going to be liked, and we shouldn't worry about being liked. And I really hope that he pushes that button during the debate and talks about the distinction between being liked and being respected.
All right, on that note, an American politician, well said, who often says he doesn't worry about being liked is Governor Chris Christie. And we're going to try to rack the tape again and see if we can play. Again, these were his comments earlier this week about what needed to happen in the debate that occurred last night. We'll roll that tape.
Your bolder campaign for Mitt Romney?
Well, I think what we need is a big and bold performance on Wednesday night, and that's what he's going to give us. I have absolute confidence in that. And the fact is that the ideas are there, but let's face it, George, there's been a lot of filtering going on, and I'm not going to sit here and complain about coverage in a campaign, because as a candidate, if you do that, you're losing. But what I will tell you is this is the first moment when the American people are going to be able to see these two guys side by side, laying out their vision, unfiltered. And I think that's going to be a powerful moment for Mitt Romney, and I think folks like Charles Krauthammer will be happy on Thursday morning, certainly happier than they are now.
Okay, now before I ask our panelists what they thought of last night, I'm going to ask the audience who you thought won. Okay. Do you think it was President Obama? No. Do you think it was Governor Mitt Romney? No. Unlike the Democratic Convention, I don't think I'm going to have to take that vote a second or a third or a fourth time. I think, according to you all, Governor Mitt Romney took the debate. And, of course, all the polls are showing that this morning. I'm sure Charles Krauthammer, who rarely comes off as happy, probably was actually happy this morning. Love Charles, but, he keeps it real. Let me get you – first of all, was anybody here surprised with what they saw last night?
I was not surprised in the least. As I pointed out, we had a meeting with Governor Romney on Monday night, and the passion and the confidence with which he was talking – I had never seen that before, and I didn't know whether this was simply because I was seeing him in person for the first time, because he wasn't coming across as he did on television, nor did he at the rally after our meeting. And I asked one of his top campaign aides, who was sort of showing us around and escorting us, I said, is this typical? Is this a distinction between seeing him in person and seeing him on television? Or is it always like this? And he said, no, he is on fire right now, because he feels like he's the underdog, he feels like he's under attack, and he is in rare form. And so I kind of felt like the debate was going to go well, and we went ahead and did an endorsement ahead. We were going to wait until after the debate, and we went ahead and did it before the debate. I was a little hesitant to do it before the debate, because before we had met with him, I was hesitant to do it before the debate because I didn't know how it was going to come out. I felt very confident that he would do well, and boy, did he exceed my wildest dreams on that. That was just a decisive victory, and with all, it wasn't one of the most debates that I've seen in my lifetime come down to, well, there you go again, and I will not let my opponent's youth and inexperience define this race. And with all due respect to Reagan, those were great lines. I mean, this debate, there were none of those. This was one on substance, and I think that it changes the whole campaign. It's not now about personalities and men, but it is about a message of freedom, economic freedom and prosperity. And I think Mitt Romney wins that one every time.
Matt.
I think last night's debate well, first off, I mean, it's pretty clear that Romney won, but...
I don't know, we maybe should take the vote again.
Well, if you watch MSNBC after, there's they thought differently. They thought he lied and whatever, but they haven't been able to point out a single instance of that. But I think what was really interesting about it was watching Obama on the split screen, and you see he almost looked like the cat who ate the canary. He got caught being a bad president, and Romney was talking down to him like a kid who got caught in high school doing something wrong, and he's getting disciplined by the principal, and he's just sitting there nodding his head like, yeah, I agree with you. And the thing is that, if Romney keeps this up for the next month until the election, I think he's going to win. This was the major concern that a lot of Beltway conservatives inside Washington would have, as well as around the country. Is Romney going to step up and get on fire, as you said? And he's on fire right now, and if he keeps it up, he's going to win.
Charlie, were you surprised by the performance at all? And not just by Governor Romney,
surprised.
but also by President Obama's performance. There were two folks up there last night.
Yeah,
One's
I think
getting
a
all
lot
the
of
discussion,
conservatives were surprised by Romney's performance. They didn't know what to expect. They knew he would win, but they didn't know that he was going to win this big. And I think that up until now, conservatives had a hard time loving Mitt Romney. They support him. They support his campaign. But I think after that debate, I think a lot of conservatives realized that they loved their candidate and they were proud of him.
Ann Romney, during the Republican National Convention, I thought her speech was brilliant. She talked about trust, that she trusts her husband. And last night was about trust. I go around on different formats. I'm a chairman of Special Operations for America. And I talk about how many, we'll run a straw poll. How many of you out there trust the United States government? Okay. And I don't want to take the point lightly, but as a Navy SEAL, I've been to 63 countries, I think, in my lifetime and fought on most continents. And I can tell you that Vice Admiral or Admiral Mullins has said the greatest threat to our country is our national debt. And I'll respectfully disagree. I think it's trust. If we as a people no longer trust our government, if we no longer trust in the faith of our government, this republic will fail. It will. So last night, what I thought was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, is Governor Romney became the candidate we can trust.
I think you hit the nail on the head, though, too, Wayne, in the sense that this was a very substantive debate, as debates go. I mean, there was actually a lot of discussion of policy. They got into more detail than you ever see on television. What was the part of it that you thought stood out the most in terms of the issue set? Was it the Medicare back and forth, the tax reform back and forth, their view of government? What stood out?
I think the way that Mitt Romney was very able to illustrate very clearly, and I won't be able to illustrate it as clearly, how you cannot get us out of this economic mess that we're in by taxing people, by raising taxes, because then you create less employment. And he says you just simply can't get from here to there. And that description and others showed that he clearly understands the material. He understands economics. He won on points of style. He was a better debater, but it didn't matter. Obama could have come out and given one of his great performances, and he still loses this debate because he didn't know the material, because he doesn't understand fundamental economic principles. And that's not going to change.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought it was really interesting was Obama, as a reporter, you hear these candidates say the same thing over and over again, and I think Romney brought an entirely new game to the stage. He was saying lines that conservatives have been begging for him to say. Obama came with his standard stump speech. And stump speeches are great, but when somebody's there to point out that hey, that independent study you're citing isn't independent, and hey, it's wrong. Obama wasn't even able to defend those talking points.
Right. Matt.
And to play off of that, I mean, did anybody notice that the AARP came out after the debate and said, "Yeah, Mr. President, we don't want you citing us," and in addition to that, he threw his support behind a lot of. He wasn't ready specifically. I mean, for instance, he threw himself behind the Independent Payment Advisory Board, which is, of course, as Governor Sarah Palin calls it, the Obamacare's death panel with Medicare. And even Barney Frank supports repealing it. He's a co-sponsor on the legislation to repeal it. There's bipartisan support to repeal that. I mean, the president showed, and by the way, the only good line that President Obama really got in was with regard to Dodd-Frank, and he needed Jim Blair to set it up for him. He didn't have anything substantive to come in, and it showed. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next debates. Usually the other person will come back a little bit stronger. So we'll see and that's why I say if Romney keeps this up, he'll win. But if not, he's got to stay strong and show the exact same performance the next time around or better.
I think one reason it's potential, or that maybe one of the reasons that President Obama didn't do as well and stuck to his stump speeches, when you look at the record and where we are as a country, we're not in great shape. There's not a lot to brag about right now when you look at all the individual issues. And I want to put up on screen basically kind of a breakdown. And this is something Senator Thune was here earlier today. The Republican Study Conference, of which he's the chairman in the Senate side, put out this information. And I think when you have it all in one place, it's pretty damning. Take a look here at the screen. Back when President was inaugurated almost 4 years ago, unemployed Americans 12 million. Today, 12.5. Almost 500,000 more Americans today unemployed. Unemployment rate up almost 4%. Long-term unemployed almost doubled, going from 2.7 to 5 million. Middle-class income dropped by over $4,500, and then gas prices jumping over 100%. Second slide here, home values. For those of us who are homeowners, not good here, 10% on average down. Healthcare costs, supposedly this was going to be solved, has gone up 29%. College tuition, for all those young folks, the 66% we heard about 4 years ago who voted for President Obama, they and their parents, I'm sure, don't like the number that it's gone up almost $2,000. Americans in poverty from 39.8 million to 46 million today. Food stamp recipients, 32 million to 47 million. And then the final slide, a consumer price index, up 9.1%. Federal debt, we all know that number, up $6 trillion. Debt per person, up to $50,000. And by the way, that's only of where we are today. If you add in all the promises that we have made via Social Security and Medicare and the like, that is more like $200,000 per person based on promises we've made today. And by the way, if you would like that chart you saw there, because I think if you wanted to pass that out to folks who were undecided, there's a nice one-pager that's got all of it there. And if you go to the Saving the American Dream table out by the breakout sessions, we will give you hard copies of that, and you can take it home and take out and give it to as many folks as you would like. When you look at those numbers, what should President Obama have said last night, or what should he say in the next debate that would change the mood of the country, maybe how people perceive this kind of information? I'm sorry. Good answer. Good answer. Well, because last night there was nothing new. It was like, just give me a chance to do more of what we've already done. Why is that a winning strategy?
That was the most pathetic closing statement I have ever heard from a president who is known for his ability to be articulate. That was almost sad. And well, let's do more. Just vote for me and I'll try more. I'll keep trying hard. This is ridiculous. He cannot defend this data. He can't do it. Yet somehow, and I think it's because of a media that likes him, we have a president who is seen as the friend of the minority, the friend of women, the friend of all oppressed classes of people, and they're all doing much worse off today than they were 4 years ago. And those numbers tell that story.
And more people are oppressed today than they were 4 years ago, especially if you look at those in poverty.
That's right, exactly. And I think that this is starting to become apparent to people. It's late in the game for it to become apparent, but I think it is becoming apparent. And that debate on Wednesday night was what happens when you have President Obama out there and it's not going through the filter of a friendly media and it's not being spun. It's just him and a chainsaw, as it was explained by James Carville. He was in a debate with a chainsaw, and that's what happens. He couldn't stand up to it.
James Carville is useful every once in a while.
Well,
I'm sorry, Senator, go ahead.
And I think two things. One is that I don't hate the president. I hate his policies, and there's a difference. And the second part is he always went back to the middle class. I got to tell you, I come from 3 generations of master plumbers, and there was no more middle class than me. And what middle class wants are jobs. And the government doesn't create jobs. The business side creates jobs. And I think it was clear last night that the governor, with his business background, made it very, very clear. If we're going to get this country back, and I have great faith in our country. I'm an optimist. What man breaks, man can fix. Hey, we're America. But we also perform better under pressure. I just wish it wasn't 4th and 30. I'm a 4th and 2 type guy. But I believe that America will come back, and I believe under Governor Romney we can, because it is about small business. It's about making sure that we look at speed and innovation over process and bureaucracy. And there's the line. It's always between the public sector and the private sector. And we all know people in the public sector, and God bless them. We need it. We need good, firm regulation that's known. But you can't change the regulation at will. You can't change it so the market can't price. And I believe that the essential part of getting our economy back is to let the free enterprise work as it should. Don't bail out the banks. Don't own GM. And let the government do what the government does best, and let free enterprise in the market do what we do best.
It's really interesting that Romney attacked him on green energy and education, and he used both topics to make his argument. The president in 2008, that was part of his biggest plan to save the economy, was green energy and green jobs. I mean, we all heard it. And now he's saying we need to invest more in schools. You pour money into schools, the students will go to school, and then they'll create jobs. That's the way he views the economy. That's how you create jobs, is you send people to school. That's how I got my job. I went to school. And Romney just hit the nail right on the head. He's like, you spent billions on green energy, on projects that lost. If you believe in your formula for jobs through education, why didn't you put that money in education? And that was the moment where the president grimaced. He looked down, he looked away from Romney. He was not pleased with that attack.
You kept wondering what was off to the left side of the screen, who was looking off. I'm like, the audience is out here, and Michelle's over here, and your opponent's over here, and Jim is here. What the heck is over here in the far left? But I don't know. Maybe it was their teleprompter, maybe the far left. Matt, your take on the debate.
What I don't get is, can somebody tell me what Obama did that was good? I don't know of a single thing that he did. I can't point to his success.
In the past 4 years or in the debate last night?
In the past 4 years. I mean, what's the success of the Obama administration? I don't know what it is. I don't think that they've had a success.
It's the bailout. That's the only thing he has left to run out.
The bailout was not a success, and here's why. And we're seeing this happen right now in the congressional investigations into the Delphi pension scandal, as well as what happened to the bondholders, what happened to the dealerships. What we're seeing is that this wasn't an auto bailout. It wasn't an auto industry bailout. It was a union bailout. And in addition to that, the facts aren't on his side, and the thing is, in addition to that, they like to go after Mitt Romney for writing that op-ed, "Let Detroit Go Bankrupt." Well, Mr. President, didn't GM and Chrysler go bankrupt? You just managed the bankruptcy proceedings from the White House instead of allowing it to happen through a normal and fair and honest and open proceeding. At this point in time, they're withholding tons of documents from Congress. Darrell Issa has already openly threatened Timothy Geithner that he will subpoena him if he does not provide the documents that are requested about this. And just like everything with this administration, they can try to pass it off as good, but when you take a closer look at it and you start getting into the specifics, it's not what they say it is. I don't know why my friends in the media continue to believe what's coming out of them. It's unreal. The facts are clear, and they're not on Obama's side.
I just have to say, Matt, who's done a lot of work on the Fast and Furious scandal, wrote hundreds of stories, actually prompting Eric Holder to publicly accuse you of being behind the congressional calls for his resignation. So congratulations on that badge of honor you just received.
He also has an enemies list, according to Darrell Issa as well. We uncovered emails that prove that the Justice Department has been colluding with this group that somehow magically still has a tax-exempt status called Media Matters for America to smear all of us in the media who are actually covering Fast and Furious, and as well as members of Congress and whistleblowers from the Justice Department. Yeah, it's unreal. I cannot believe that the media and that the people in Washington are allowing them to get away with this. It doesn't make any sense.
Let's talk. I want to make sure I get your previews, and then we'll play these back to you the next CPAC to see how you all did. But we got another debate coming up next week, being the vice presidential debate, of course, with Vice President Joe Biden and Congressman Paul Ryan. Why is everybody laughing? I barely said anything.
That is probably the most
interesting
pairing.
In all seriousness, you will not gaffe during the debate.
That's right.
I swear. Yeah.
You have boy genius.
But you know, I mean, a lot of folks are expecting, because Joe Biden is known from time to time to say things like the middle class being buried over the past 4 years and the like, that they're, you know, and Congressman Ryan is a good talker and he can explain things well. There's kind of high expectations for Paul Ryan, I think, next week. Charlie, how do you look at next week?
I think that's right. I mean, if Joe Biden walks off the stage, people will say that he won, because I mean, it's going to be an interesting. You have lovable Joe Biden who's tripping over himself constantly, and then you have a very intelligent, articulate Paul Ryan, and it's going to be extremely interesting. You know that Biden's going to try to make him come off as a hard numbers, unfeeling Washington wonk, and he's just the lovable guy who likes to go to biker bars.
Wayne, how do you look at next week's?
Well, that is a concern, what you just said. You worry that Americans they make decisions so much on who they like, that Biden is capable of being liked. He's capable of getting people to adore him. Even when he says stupid things like, they'll put you all back in chains, he gets away with this stuff because he is lovable Joe Biden. Clearly, you know, if we stick to economic issues throughout this debate, he's going to lose on that. He simply can't compete with Paul Ryan on that basis. Senator?
I was a Navy SEAL for 23 years, and I don't think I'd like to debate the congressman. You know, he is very articulate. He's very bright, and obviously he's a rising star for this country. I think very, very highly. I think it was a great pick. So you know, I'm excited to see the debate. I would like to see more, you know, from Montana. Energy, I think, is an important topic. We haven't talked about it in this forum yet, but you know, you look at how much energy this country has. Montana has 500 years of coal at our peak consumption. Between North Dakota, Montana, and Wyoming, we have enough natural gas and oil to power this country for hundreds of years. And it is about fracking, and fracking, I got to tell you, is a beautiful thing. But, you know,
But according to the New York Times, I think today it hurts children or something.
Well, you know, it depends on where. I have a degree in geology. It depends on where. But in the Dakota Basin of the Bakken, it clearly is a game changer. We've been talking about energy independence since the Carter administration, the DOE. And we are at the point in our history with fracking that the United States could be truly energy independent. And yet, you know, this administration says no on the Keystone Pipeline, as if it's the only pipeline between Canada and the United States. I mean, there's a 52-inch pipeline. You look at where the pipelines are. I think it's critical to get our fossil fuels going, and I'm not against alternate energy. I think I'm one of the only Republicans that drives a red Prius. It's red. You know, I don't like the fact that lithium is from Afghanistan. And, it's a Toyota.
No Chevy Volt.
My grandfather sold Chevrolets for 52 years.
Ouch.
I want to see the United States get off being held hostage by OPEC. I want to see us. That's critical. And oh, by the way, the last two wars we fought, if it was not fought over oil, you tell me what was fought over, because it was fought over energy. And I can tell you, the United States can run the table for the next 20 years if we move towards energy independence, because we have the strongest Navy in the world, and we can guarantee shipment on time. I guarantee you.
Well, there has to be a reason that I believe it was Hugo Chavez who was called on tape saying he hoped President Obama would win a second term. So I don't know what that was about.
And he sells refrigerators, or he gives refrigerators out. It's amazing to see the parallels, you know, on.
Final kind of discussion here for you all. Obviously, we have a lot going on between now and November 6th, and much will depend on what happens on November 6th. But there's a lot of work to be done. Whoever is elected when they get to Washington in January. I mean, I think we can all agree that Republicans and Democrats are both guilty of where we are in terms of our debt, because we've been kicking the can and kicking the can and kicking the can down the road. And the first 6 months of next year could be hugely important in setting the agenda for what kind of serious reforms are going to happen. A lot of folks say if Romney gets in, energy will be one of the main things that they take on and will likely get moving on in a good direction. But entitlement reform is huge, and that will be probably some of what Paul Ryan has talked or has asked about, if you will say next week. How ready do you think conservatives are, the conservative movement is, to really take on and do what's going to need to be done with a big victory on November 6th? Because then now you've got the power. What are we going to do with it? Wayne?
I don't think they're very ready to take on what needs to be taken on. Personally, we have established this debt crisis through conservative administrations and through liberal administrations. Obviously, we make it much worse when we have a liberal administration. But the problem is structural. We have a Congress of 400 and some members, and the responsibility for this out-of-control spending is spread over that many people. Not one of them, and in fact, each one of them is rewarded for spending more on his or her district or his or her state in the case of a senator. And so we can't grow our way out of this. We'll just spend more. Until we have a line item veto, or we restore impoundment authority to the executive branch of government, we're going to be in debt, and then the debt's going to continue to grow.
I'll disagree. Not because I don't love you.
Finally, disagreement on the panel.
But if Chris Christie can do it in New Jersey, we can do it in the United States. And there's enough talent here. We know the issues. The government's too big. We're spending too much. We know what a balanced budget looks like. We may not do it in the first 4 years, but we can do it in 10. You know, and it is about growing the economy. It's about making, in Chris Christie's words, it's tough love. And when the famous 47%. Well, what the 47% needs to do is we need to go down to 30% on getting it, and to get that 17% working again. And I know that 17% wants to work. We just got to give them the opportunity. It's not about equal outcome, it's about equal opportunity.
Well, I hope you're right. May I point out, though, that Chris Christie does have impoundment authority. He can stop spending that is authorized by the legislative branch, and the president can't do that.
Which is why it matters what
right.
the Senate does and what the House does, and they've got to be bold as well.
Right. If you put a congressman like Paul Ryan, if they do win the election in November, you put him in a room with a group of people, and this is what he's done his entire career, is convince you that change needs to happen on this issue. And in 2008, he handed his plan to McCain and said, you know, this is important. I would hope that you would take it and read it and run on it. Well, McCain wouldn't even touch it. And what's interesting about Romney, and this is why Ryan backed Romney, is because Romney saw Paul Ryan, heard his message, and said, we can win on this. And it might be a little vague during the campaign, but if they do win the election, I think that Paul Ryan's going to do a great, great deal of work to make that happen.
Well, obviously, that and getting a fiscal house in order is at the by far at the top of the list of things to do. I would love to hear from, and I think a lot of other people out there would too, love to hear from Romney and Ryan as to if they win the election, how are they going to restore the rule of law in the country? Because this administration has, on numerous occasions, violated the law, and nothing has been done to hold them accountable. You know, I mean, specifically, the HHS secretary violated the Hatch Act. The judge and jury spoke for the Office of Special Counsel. Why is she still there? You know, the standard its penalty is termination. And there are examples of this all throughout this administration. So, and it's a systemic government problem too. It's not just a Democrat problem or a Republican problem. This happens in all administrations. It's a bureaucracy problem. But how are they going to deal with that? With regard to the rule of law, as well as you know, taking on and shrinking the size of government, because it's hard to do. You know, it is very hard to turn government the other way around and shrink it.
All right, final question for our panelists. I'm going to put them on the spot because I didn't tell them I was going to ask them to make any sort of prediction when it came to the election. I'm not going to ask you to predict presidential, but Wayne, I'll start down here with you. Who's going to win this Senate in November?
I believe the Republicans will win the Senate in November because of the way the presidential race is going.
On a board of life, it's going to be a tough bet. I think the Republicans will win by a slimmest of margins on the Senate. The Congress, I think, is fait accompli, and I think Mitt Romney will be the next president of the United States.
Charlie?
I think if Mitt Romney continues on the path that he started last night, I think that every election, every race that has a Republican in it will do well.
Who's going to win the Senate? See, that's a journalist's way of avoiding
Yeah, see.
Yes.
I'll say Republicans.
Okay, all right. Because we're taping this. It's all on record.
I know.
You know, it's going to be tough. I mean, we're going to have to see. I would agree with Charlie in that it's really going to matter how the top of the ticket does and then down ticket. I would think the Republicans are probably going to win the Senate, but it's going to be a long slog. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be a hard fight.
Amen. Well, and that's one reason I ended on the topic that we did. I think conservatives are going to have a good day on November 6th. But one of the reasons I started out with talking about this bus tour that we've done it is not just to motivate people for November 6th, but it's to lay the groundwork for the real hard work that's going to be needed come January. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm not worried about you all staying engaged, but please do stay engaged, because it will be very tough for even good folks, good conservatives who get elected, to do what they need to do both in Washington and in state houses around this country if they don't keep hearing from you, because they're going to be told they'll never get reelected if they do the things they need to do. So please stay in the game. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you all so much for your support and for being here. And please help me thank our great panel as well. Thank you.